Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we have the RCX Micro Q brushed quadcopter. This is a kit that comes from my RC Mart, and I'll leave a link in the description down below to the product. And it's a brushed kit. We've been seeing a lot of these, and this is the only one that the only kit I believe that RC Mart offers. And I ordered it a while back and it finally arrived. I also ordered a camera to put on this that RC Mart says weighs 2.8 grams, but that has been on back order for a while. We're going to take a look at the kit, and then I'll use a camera that I got from Banggood here recently. And it does come in a nice box. You don't have to worry about things getting squashed or whatever have you. And I've been in this already, and we see that it's an F3 Evo. And this board is pretty familiar. You can get this board from Banggood. This kit does not come with any instructions whatsoever. So if you're not familiar with these boards, I'll put an image on screen and I'll link to this board on the Banggood website down below. Essentially what you have is the same sort of layout that we see for a lot of boards. We've got the motors, motor 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we have a little spot down here for our battery lead, which does come in the bag here. Some micro low-C. I am going to use a JST instead because my favorite batteries use JSTs. And we have a little good 3M double-sided sticky tape. And then these are for DSM, so Spectrum. Let me get a little pointer. Now on the Banggood website, they don't show this little transistor or what have you. This might be an LED too, I'm not sure which. I don't think it is though. You need to solder down here to the bottom, but that's for your battery leads plus and minus. And then we have the DSM connections here. 3.3 volt is up here at the top. Then we have ground, and then this is your signal. And then you have your UARTs. This is UART1 and UART2 and UART3, and they are consistent all the way across, lined up this way. We've got our ground, which is indicated by the square. We've got 5 volts. We've got our RX1 and RX2 and RX3, and then we've got our TX1, TX2, and TX3. So pretty basic, simple board. I plan to put a Betaflight on this, and these work pretty well. I like these boards a lot. They're good and light, and we also have the buzzer, which I will be putting on as well. You can get buzzers off of eBay for just a couple dollars. It also comes with prop guards, so for indoor flying, if you want to use that, you can. And we've got a set of nondescript 8.5 millimeter motors. We'll have to see if these are any good or not. And this is really surprising. This has got to be one of the smallest diameter frames, or not diameter, but thickness of frames. This is only 1 millimeter, and you can see it flexes a fair amount. Oddly enough, I think it flexes more this way than this way. That's just got to be me, because that looks symmetrical to me. And then we also have our set of props. And let's get these props out. I want to draw our attention to one particular thing. Sorry, I'm making lots of noise with this package. Should have had these props out already. I talk about this a lot, is these props have a deepened hole, so we should be sinking these propellers clear down to the housing on the motor. And this will go around the bearing at the top, and then our prop stem will go down inside. It's not drilled through, but I think if we look at this, it should be deep enough to where we can get this all the way down inside. We won't need to drill through. And then we have some little random bits and pieces. And the reason why I went after this one was, one, it's only $19.99. We do have to pay shipping from my RC Mart. And it was a bit of a different design. We're kind of starting to see where the designs are only slightly different, and this one is, I would say, a fair amount of different, and I wanted to give it a go. So I'm going to take all these bits and put them together into a quad. Here we are in my final assembled state, and you see we've got some pieces sitting out here to the side. And if you look at the pictures on the RC Mart website, you'll see that they actually designed this plate to be over the top. They show pictures of this board being underneath, and then this plate being underneath here. But unfortunately, with the standoffs they included, if you do mount your board underneath, unless you have a receiver that is a lot smaller than this as far as its height when you lay it down, it's going to squash it pretty heavily, and I wasn't comfortable with that. So I decided to desolder everything and put it back on this way. And I don't even really think there's a need for this plate in the configuration that I have, because if you're going to put your battery on the bottom anyways, what's the point in having a plate? That's just going to make putting the battery on there a little bit more of a hassle. And if you put, and this will show you a little bit, if you put the plate up here, you can see that angle. Let me get that prop out of the way. Well, I don't know if I can get it all the way. Here, I'll show you at this sort of angle. So you'd really be squashing that down quite a bit. And I don't have a problem with it being on top. It would be nice to have the battery as kind of the center of mass. And a lot of times in brushless quads, what you'll find is they try to get that battery, which is the biggest part of the weight, right in the center of the mass or in the prop line, they oftentimes say. And also, I'd mentioned previously about these props, and they should push all the way on, but they don't. The motor stems are too long. And that's something else about these coreless or brushed motors, is the stem length varies, and sometimes you can get them all the way down, sometimes you can't. I would recommend drilling these out in this case. And if I've mentioned this a number of times, I probably should make a separate video about it. There's a kit, I got a motor stuck to it here, you can buy off of Amazon, and I'll link this down below, that has these little tiny drill bits in it, and they are as thin as a needle, some of them in there. And you want to find one that is thinner than your prop shaft, and it's really just a hand drill. So you want to make sure it's going in as straight as possible, and this back part spins so that you can put your hand for pressure here and then rotate it. You might want to set up some sort of rig to make sure your prop stays flat. The Walkera Ladybird props that are actually flat on the bottom, that's a lot easier to do. These rounded ones, they're a bit of a challenge. But this is how I drill out props. You also see that we have 2 extra pieces of motor cage, and I'm not sure why they are, because they are the same. And when you assemble the motor cages, you actually have one that has an opposite notch so that fits down inside of it like this. My fingers are probably going to cover that up largely, but so that notch should actually be in the inside. That way your pieces come together flat, so you get motor cages that are flat like this on both sides. And those motor cages do a really good job of really holding onto these motors. One in particular, I don't recall which motor it was in a special challenge to get it seated down in there firmly. And you do want to get them down here as close to the bottom as you can. Don't get crazy with pressure, and don't put pressure on the motor stem. Use the motor housing to get these down to protect yourself from the end cap popping out, because if the end cap pops out, you're done. Now the next challenge with this is mounting a camera, and that's why you see I have this plate out here. And I'm not sure it's actually going to stay there when I get around to mounting a camera. We have very little prop clearance, and I have a camera that I'm going to use, and it's this one. This is a new one from Banggood. This is the CM275T. It's a 25 milliwatt camera, and it comes in, I believe, 3.8 grams, but I just made a video about that, so if you want to go back and look at this camera, I'll put a card right up here to that video. And it's got these 2 switches, so mounting this underneath is going to kind of make using these 2 switches a pain, but I'm hopeful I can actually get the antenna between here, and I'm going to have to take the top plate back off to do that. Get the antenna between there, and then the antenna will come out clear of the props, or relatively clear of the props. And then I'll have to figure out how I mount it. I may have to move my little beeper. I wanted to use a beeper. I don't know about you, but one of the troubles I have is I go down, and for some reason I lose my mind, and I can't even hardly remember where I went down, even just flying around the yard. I might have a general idea if I saw the swing set or a particular tree, but I'll go down, and if you catch a branch or something and the copter spins and it flies a little bit before it goes down, I've stepped on these. So if I can, I always put a beeper on, and I need to actually go back and put on a beeper of a few of the others. And these beepers weigh about 1.5 grams. There's not much to it. I wouldn't add a beeper to anything running 7mm motors or 6.5mm motors, because that 1.5 grams you actually need for thrust. But usually with these 8.5mm motors, the 1.5 grams won't kill us. So let's weigh it up as I've got it configured here. You may find that you can be more creative and come up with ideas of mounting everything together in a different configuration. let's see what we've got here. Get everything on the scale. 38.6. If I add my camera, got 42.1. And that lead will get shorter because I'm going to put it right off of that connector. And I'm using a connector in case I have to move it around. So I don't want to be soldering, desoldering it off. So the connector will add just a tiny bit of weight, but there about be as much weight, or if not more, when I trim this lead back. So I'm going to get the camera mounted up, and then we're going to take it out for a fly. One thing I didn't cover there is the prop guard that comes with the kit for inside flying, if you want to use that. Let me see if I can get this. 3.1 grams. So if we put our quad back on here, it's zeroed, okay. If we put our quad, if you're flying inside, our dry weight, which is without battery, is 41.9. And then we also add our little tiny camera. And this is probably going to be one of the lighter cameras we can find at 45.4. So as far as weight goes, if these motors perform even decently, we should be fine. It should fly quite well. If the motors perform well, it'll just be an added benefit. All right, now we're going to go outside and fly. Taking off for our first flight, and this is the tune that I ended up landing on, and that's the one I'll post at the end of this video. So if you are looking for the PIDs for this particular copter, you'll be able to see that. Unfortunately, this flight is somewhat short, and we don't get a full opportunity to explore the tune, but because I ran out of time, and as you can see, it's actually not that late in the day. It's only about 3:30 in the afternoon, and that sun is quite low here in the States. So my apologies for not having more final tune flights, but you will get to see the PIDs. This one flies fine. The thing I think I like the most about it is the caged motors. As you'll see here in a few crashes, when you hit something, those cage motors keep the motors in place. Versus grommets, you'll oftentimes find that maybe you'll be able to take off again, but it'll fly kind of wonky. Maybe you can just bring it in, but you know, you might have a motor that's turned in or out or forward or back, and so it won't fly quite right. Or you might have multiple motors turned in different directions, and it could be just a complete hassle. But this one you can bang into stuff, and the motors will stay in place. So as long as your props are intact and good shape, you'll be able to take off again, provided you're upright too. As I'm fortunate in several of these where I go down, the motors are upright. And you can see as I try to yaw around things, ooh, and I smacked that swing set, it just doesn't have enough thrust in order to do more aggressive maneuvers, and I attribute that primarily to the motors. I'm not a huge fan of these motors, but we have no idea what the specifications are of the motors. We don't know where they've come from. So if you have this kit and you want more thrust, you're not going to be able to run really big props on this, but you might be able to cut down some 66mm props, and you'll be able to get more thrust possibly. And I'm running a pretty good battery here. This is one of my favorite batteries, the 480 mAh my LiPo battery with a JST connector. So it's got to be either props or motors. It flies okay. It's kind of a cruiser with the stock motors. I did end up switching out the props because I found the original props were not good. All sorts of jello on the screen, and it's kind of those props I've seen on other micros where they cause pretty much the same problem. Either they don't stay on, or they just give you all sorts of jello, or that makes it really problematic to tune the copter. So I switched over to some Ladybird props, and they eliminated the jello. You see a little bit of the prop spinning through. That's not jello in the video. That's just how the props fly through our FPV feed. But those propellers generally are more well balanced. The holes are centered, and whenever I have prop problems, I go to those to test to see what's going on. And you can see several times, is like right here, I try to pull the nose up so I can gain enough altitude because I'm hitting the throttle, but I'm just not getting the lift I need. But you can always take different motors from Micro Motor Warehouse or Spintech or Kato and Gnarly, and there's a whole bunch of different motor options there for 8.5mm. There's probably even more for 6mm motor with the tiny whip craze. Overall, I'm not unhappy with it, but I just think that there are some possible better options. I think some of the Eachine products or the QX80
the QX80 has motor cages, and in my opinion has better motors so that you can get more thrust out of them. So you can go this route and possibly save a few dollars. Like the camera I have on here I think was $23.99. The kit itself was $19.99, but shipping costs about $5 here to the States. And then you've got to replace the props, so you've got another $2 or $3 there. You add a battery, and then you have to put your own receiver on. So if you can save money versus another one, I kind of doubt that, but maybe, because a lot of these brushed micros are coming in around $60, maybe $70, and if you find any coupon codes to use, you'll be able to save more money going that route. The last one I flew, which I think was the QX95, the tiny QX95, I like that one more. It had more lift. I think it was a wee bit lighter. It doesn't have the ability to put a buzzer on that one because they use the shortened board. It doesn't have the buzzer pads on it, so that's a trade-off you have to make. But that one uses grommets, so if you bang off the ground like I just did, or if you hit something, the motors are going to shift a little bit. And when we get back to the desk, I think there's some ideas that hopefully maybe somebody by chance that makes these frames will see it, that I think they can work out motor cages and having a frame that flies, provided they give us prop sizes that work and motors that have a bit more thrust. I don't think we need, screaming insane fast motors to make these things fly very well, but I think there's a combination of things that the designers can do to really help us get the most out of it. So I'm going to bring up the music and just enjoy the rest of the flight.
Okay, back at the desk, we'll cover one last thing, and then we'll show the PIDs for this little guy as I have it configured. When I was talking about how they might change the design a little bit to benefit us, I was thinking two things. Is make this area down here thicker, and then extend this top up to where the motors sit a bit higher, and then allow us possibly the ability to mount our battery here in the middle, so we keep the battery more in line, which is probably the biggest part of our weight, more in line with our prop line, which should give us better flying attributes. I think also they need to use a little better motors. I mean, these are fine. They'll get you in the air. If you're using a bigger camera that's a bit heavier, you're going to have, of course, less punch. But I think as they have the quad frame laid out, it might be a bit cumbersome unless you're using one of those teeny tiny receivers. I've got some on order, but they're half a gram, and they come on things like the the QX95 from Banggood, and it's so small. It's like one of the size of these squares. I do like the motor cages. I'm always a big fan of those. I know you've probably heard me say that a few times, and it's because when you bang them off stuff, if you have grommets, like in this case, the grommets are a lot better than when I first started. Used to be the grommets didn't come all the way out here. They would just, or not the grommet would be a full circle, but the carbon fiber that would come out here wouldn't come out all the way, so it would be kind of like it would end here and here, and then we'd have to do all sorts of steps to kind of firm up these grommets. You could take dental floss and wrap it around there, or put glue in there, or various other steps to keep the props from moving around, and so these have gotten a lot better as they've enclosed those grommet holes. I do think we have a bit more carbon fiber than we actually need, but carbon fiber doesn't weigh all that much. I think in the original design, having all those other extra plates just isn't necessary. It can provide you protection. It also has a certain look and feel to it. But overall, it's a decent flyer. I would say if you like to tinker, you like to build your kits, this is a pretty good option. If you're looking for the absolute best flyer with the best possible combination of parts, this isn't necessarily it. As I said in the flying video, by the time you add up all the different pieces you've got to put on this, it's going to be a wash, or you're actually could cost you a little bit more, a little bit less than buying one of the all-in-one kits that are already have all the parts selected for you. So that's our final look at the RCX Brushed Micro. And let's take a look at the Clean Flight PIDs. You can see here, and this isn't necessarily unusual for Brushed Micros, is our values are kind of high, and this is Betaflight 301, and you can see the roll, pitch, and yaw there is pretty high in all three regards. The integral, I really didn't change that much because I didn't have any problems with the nose pitching or anything like that, and the derivative stayed relatively low. That's actually really close to the defaults. And I use fairly high rates on yaw. That's just how I like to fly, so you might need to change those up or down. Okay, thanks for watching.